Hello and welcome to another episode of The Coder Career with me, your host, Cameron Blackwood. Today's guest is Jonathan Wilke. Jonathan is the founder of SupaStarter, which acts as a boilerplate for anyone that wants to launch their own projects. It bundles together some of the most common tools that indie hackers use and allows you to focus on exactly what you want to do. On today's show, myself and Jonathan discuss why he chose to go with the stack he did. We also discuss how to get started with building your own commercially oriented projects. This is a really great episode if you want to know how your favorite creators make products under the hood. Speaking of products, do check out my latest product, Pinpoint. You can find a link to that in the description. If you're looking for a new job, I find it really helpful if you want to test it. Please get in touch with me if you're keen. Hope you enjoy the show. The labour market as a whole is changing, and tech companies are always at the forefront of innovation. More and more companies are adopting a 4-day work week, so 32 hours at a full salary. Imagine what you could do with an extra day in your week. You could spend more time with your family, work on side projects, or take up a new hobby. And that's why I'm delighted to say that the Coder Career is brought to you by 4dayweek.io. Created by previous guest Phil McParlin, it's a job board where you can find the very best jobs that work a 32-hour work week. So what are you waiting for? Get that extra day in your week. Go to 4dayweek.io to find out more. Hey Jonathan, thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Hey, great to be here.
Great to have you. So for people who aren't, I guess your biggest audience is on Twitter. So for people that aren't on Twitter, particularly in the indie hacking community, do you want to explain a little bit about who you are and what you work on right now?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm a full stack developer from Germany. So as you just told me before, I'm the first guest on the podcast from Germany, so it's an honor. And I'm also the creator and founder of SupaStarter, which is a boilerplate for SaaS applications based on Supabase and NextJS, which I am building in public. And that's actually where we know each other from, basically from Twitter, because I'm sharing my journey there. And we're just exchanging about building things and the indie hacker journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're building is really awesome. And would you believe it? I only discovered it about 2 weeks after starting my own most recent project, which is Pinpoint, and the tech stack is like for like. So I think it's a really, really cool product what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to trying it out the next time I have a project to start because it will be the same tech stack. So for people who aren't familiar with kind of how your product works. It's basically you kind of get a lot of the hard work done for you up front, and that's why it's so cool,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So the main benefit you get from this product is essentially saving time and also effort and research, because there went a lot of researching experience from previous projects I've worked on, and also implementation time into this. And that's essentially what you save when you use this product to start your SaaS. So you can get like maybe even a month of head start.
Yeah, and I think something that I always talk about in both these podcasts, my YouTube videos, is how I really think that people don't consider time as an economic unit, and they really should, especially if you're building some kind of independent project. Because for both of us, we both got day jobs, and we're working on stuff outside of those hours. The time is pretty precious, both in terms of you
Mm-hmm.
need to be doing things with your friends and family for your own mental
Absolutely.
health, but then as well
Yeah.
getting enough sleep, looking after yourself, and then the hours start dwindling, and you've got to use them effectively. And the value proposition of what you do cuts out all that time that is
Exactly.
kind of
Yeah.
the same repetitive task with setting things up. And it's one of those
Yeah.
things that, I can totally see the value proposition straight off the bat. And the technology stack is very cool. I mean, I'm biased because it is literally the stack I use. What's the technology stack, just for the listeners' benefit?
So currently, it's mainly built around Next.js and Supabase. There's a big internal refactoring going on currently, where we try to make things a little bit more flexible. I also just got another developer on board to build the Next version so that we can expand this boilerplate to the Vue or Next ecosystem. And I'm also planning a boilerplate for mobile apps for later this year. But currently it's Supabase combined with Next.js and things like Stripe for authentication, We've also some nice libraries included, like Tailwind and Chakra UI for styling the application. You can choose either just the one that you prefer. We have some libraries for forms integrated for state management. So basically, you can still pick the tools you want and just remove the existing one. But I wanted this starter template to be at a point where you actually don't have to make the decisions or do all the research if you don't want to.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think something that it took me a while to realize after I learned to code was that opinionated is not necessarily a bad thing. If you
Yes.
have something that's opinionated already, then it takes away from that labor of deciding on what tool, doing that research, as you mentioned, which is pretty intensive. Like for Pinpoint, I documented the complete pain I had getting the correct drag and drop library to work. And in fact, it was I'd spent days on it. I was sitting at my parents' house at Christmas. At one point, basically desperately asking my mum if she had any opinion on the matter, because I didn't know. And then, of all people, Theo, the CEO of Ping, who
Yeah.
does cool
Yeah.
videos on
Yeah.
React, he literally put out a video. It was like, this is the React D&D kit. This is what you want to use for drag and drop. And I was like, oh, brilliant. It's exactly what I did. Plugged it straight in and it worked. But,
Yeah.
the fact that you're able to make these key decisions early on, and you're kind of already got that stuff to base off, you're going to save so much time in the research, completely disregarding all the time that you'd have to do config and setup and all of that. So yeah, I think that's really cool. And then in terms of the can't remember the right word for it, like bundler. Do you have something preset there, like Vite or Webpack or anything like that?
Yeah, so currently Next.js is built on Webpack, so that's what this thing comes with.
Oh yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
So that's actually nothing you have to care about, and that's also one thing in general. The idea of picking tools that are a little bit more abstract, so that you don't have to make these very low level decisions. Like using Supabase just takes away all the pain of what database do I use, how do I scale my server, how do I protect the database from attacks and so on. And the combination of all these services that I incorporate into this boilerplate, like also Stripe and Vercel for hosting, it just enables you as a developer to focus on the core business of your application, and the rest is just there.
Yeah, so you can focus on your actual, let you handle
Exactly,
your value
yeah.
proposition, and then let the end user handle
Yeah.
their value proposition. It makes a lot of sense. And yeah, that's interesting. You lean heavily into Supabase, because I was always curious about Supabase for a long time, and then I tried it with Pinpoint my first time properly, and I was like, wow, how? I mean, I know it's a fairly recent tool, but like, how was I not in like the first user group for this? This is a game changer, really. Like, I know there's been stuff like Firebase, but to be honest, I found its UX tricky to work with. I had some problems with it. Maybe it's because I was a more junior developer when I tried to use it, but everything with Supabase, you just plug it in and it just works. Like, I'm always shocked at actually how easy it is to get something good up and running with it. And like you said, the scalability, the vulnerability to attacks and that kind of thing. The way I see it,
Yeah.
Supabase can manage any kind of application for a very, very long time. And if you're getting to the point where you need to move beyond Supabase, then you've probably got so much money you can hire a DevOps wizard anyway,
Well, if you don't have that, then you're doing something wrong in your business. But I agree. I agree that Supabase is just far better than Firebase, in my opinion, because it takes the same idea of having this service for your backend, but the decisions they made in terms of, we choose Postgres, which is an open source library. So they basically do everything based on open source. And also the fact that you don't have to stay there if you don't want to. Like, it is basically just a Postgres database. You can easily get your data out of there, which is for many larger companies a reason to not go with things like Firebase, because you have a heavy vendor lock-in.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think generally with the whole open source thing as well, you can pull it out and host it yourself. And like you said, I think it's a vote in confidence in your own product, that you have the ability to readily extract your own data, right? Because it's almost, I feel like with Firebase, it's almost like, oh, well, once you're locked in, too bad. It doesn't show confidence in what you're building. And, with Google, it's not like I don't like them as a company. It's just that they have a history of just sunsetting everything. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I lost all my Stadia games. I got a refund, but that's one thing. But I don't want to lose all my application data. Like, if I'm an indie hacker who is paying for my mortgage or my family based entirely off revenue to something that's tied up to a third party like that, like Supabase, it's not. I guess you could argue, yeah, well, you are giving loads of trust in that third party. But if that third party is built upon the open source tools, it's not the same level of trust. I can't think of the right word, trust or buy-in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the thing is, once you're actually into that service and you need to scale up, this thing can become very expensive at some point, and maybe even destroy your business strategy.
Yeah.
I don't know. There is a German company. They build games. They actually do a podcast too. It's a German podcast. They call Programmierbar, and I've heard in there that they made like a mistake or a bad architecture when using Firebase, and they were querying questions for a quiz game, and the way they architectured this, they were basically requesting every single question all the time when a user clicked next or something, and this ended up in them having like 18,000 euros a month bill for Firebase, and yeah, that's where it gets heavy.
It's stories like that where that's why you realize that cloud economist is not like just a joke job title. Like, if I tell you what, that's advice for anyone who's listening here early in your career. Like, don't be afraid of the cloud, because you can go and save a company a lot of money. And what's a better job interview tactic than saying, hey, look, I saved my last place 20K a month, just pay me 5K a month for it. Like, there's not many easier ways of just saying things like that. But yeah, I totally agree. It's one of those things you just have to be so careful with it, and that's why I think I can't remember exactly what Supabase's pricing structure is. Is it flat or is it pay as you go? Because I'm still on the free plan.
It's pay as you go. It's pay as you go. The pricing is actually very similar to what you have with Supabase currently. But since as I said, since querying data from Firebase can get very complex at some point, and you start to query do multiple queries for one request, and you pay per request, or per million requests or something, and then your architecture really matters.
Yeah, it's very true, and it's easy to think that what's one extra request, but at scale, and if you're lucky enough that your business really takes off, or even worse, I would argue, if it's not a business, if it's a fun hobby project and someone puts it on Reddit, and you get a
Hmm.
load of traffic, then you are in a lot of trouble very quickly. Like I know the YouTuber Fireship. I love his videos, and I
Yeah,
think he
really great
originally
stuff.
started off as a huge Firebase guy, but I
Yeah.
know every time he tries to launch something, he just gets absolutely bombarded. And if something like that happens to you and you're on pay as you go, then and you haven't got some kind of like paywall, then you're done for.
Yeah, true.
And so actually, winding things back to before SupaStarter, um,
Hmm.
what got you your start into coding in the first place? Was it, did you go the conventional route down through uni, or was it something that you picked up later in life?
No, I actually got into coding very, very early. Like I got my first computer with, I don't know, what was it, 9, 10 years. And probably one of the first things I started to do after playing some Age of Empires was was
One, two, or three?
s- actually I don't remember.
Three was the
um,
best.
Possibly, yeah. So maybe 1 year after that, I actually started getting into HTML, CSS, and I think then you very quickly get to certain limits and want to have some logic in there, and then I started doing some PHP with that, and yeah, from there on, it just evolved. Like JavaScript came onto the desk, and then frameworks like, actually I started with AngularJS, which was a horrible experience. Then found React and was incredibly happy that I didn't have to use AngularJS anymore. And yeah, from there it just kept going. I actually then went to university, studied, yeah, it's a combination of computer science and graphic design. So I basically have both sides covered there, with a focus on UX topics. And yeah, after that university, I actually started working as a full stack developer in a tech company in Germany.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, I'm often impressed when people say they started coding as teenagers, but you started coding before you're a teenager, which I don't even
Yeah.
know what to think of that. That is very impressive. I mean, well, how did you even know where to start? Did you have a family member, or is it just purely just internet research?
Well, I think it always and that's one of the best ways to learn things, in my opinion. I always created problems for myself that I try to solve. Like I in the beginning, I wanted to build like a website for myself, just to have something out there, and then I wanted to do something dynamic in there, and I found the problem that I need to be able to change data on the page dynamically. And just by solving problems, I think you're getting more and more into it, and suddenly you're here 15 years later, talking about web technologies and indie hacking. And yeah, that's, I think, the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, coding via necessity is without a doubt the best way to learn, right? Like most people who I speak to, at least I would hope that learn to code are not children. They're they are adults who are maybe looking at often changing careers, or they're in university, or something like that. And they often say to me, "I don't know what to do beyond some tutorials," and it's a fair point. Like I really struggle with that, because what do you do, like, other than solving isolated problems? And that also doesn't really give you the experience of trying to think about bigger decisions around the product process, because everyone,
Mm.
a lot of devs would hate to admit it, we are commercial people. Like we're either a profit center or a cost center, trying to save a company money. So it's one of those ones where you have to think about some kind of problem you're trying to solve in your day-to-day
Yeah.
life. And what I usually say to people, my like generic advice is, look, just have the notes app open on your phone, or go old school, carry around a book and a pen, and just think about problems that either you find annoying in your day-to-day life for a week, or your friends and
Mm.
family. Just little things. Like I'm trying to think about that now. I'm looking to my side, and my cat is asleep on the chair next to me, and I'm thinking, oh, okay,
Mhm.
I want to like have a reminder on my phone, that sends me a text saying which combination of food he should have because he has his dry food and his wet food. And obviously, I do remember that. But if I'm sharing it between me and my girlfriend, for example, we need to check that he doesn't get double fed because he will try and trick us into thinking he's not being fed already. So I'm already thinking about this problem now and going through it in my head, like, okay, I'd need the 2 users, need to be able to validate stuff. So there's already like something so mundane about like, has the cat been fed? You can make that into a full stack web application, as goofy as that sounds.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't even have to be like an expert at things. You can get started with very small things, like and actually just writing a program that says "Hello World," or maybe the typical small to do example. When you do it the first time yourself, it actually feels like you have superheroes. You're a superhero, like superpowers.
Magic,
that's the word.
Yeah,
yeah, superpowers. And I think in general, just from what I saw in university, there were a lot of people that coded the first time there, and when they actually saw what this enables you to do, like you have the power of a machine under your control, and that's something very, very cool. And you don't necessarily have to make it a business right away. You just can do it for fun. I mean, I've coded many projects that never saw the day of light, but were just a lot of fun to program. I learned a lot while doing it, and yeah, it's in my opinion always worth starting a project if you want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you either win in terms of you get a load of users and a load of money, or you learn because you have some kind of useful project
Which
you
is
can
also
put
a win.
on your profile. Yeah, exactly. Which is also a win. Like a win doesn't have to be a financial one. It's a good point.
Right. Yeah.
You're going to learn either way, and if it's just make sure you don't run up a huge cloud bill, I guess is the only thing. And then that's just when you can set up the alarms or even the spend caps, and just make sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I think, literally the first thing I learned with AWS was billing alarms. And I think I've only had one problem, and I think it cost me £20, which is annoying, but not the end of the world. And
Yeah.
so something I'm curious about, seeing as you mentioned your degree there and the experience at university, I think from speaking to the Discord community, which if you're a regular listener to this podcast and you're not already part of it, then the link is in the description. Do check it out. Most people on the Discord community I run, if they do have a degree, it is not in comp sci, or they don't have a degree at all. And I mean, I'm in that position because I have a business degree, and I always wonder, what did I miss out on? What do you think a developer who didn't get a comp sci degree, what do you think they've missed out on? What's the secret sauce that you guys have that we don't?
That's a very good question. Personally, I always say I wouldn't have to have the degree to be where I am right now, because I do something that I love to do, and maybe I wouldn't have that much like things like project management and things that you also learn in university. I don't think I would have gotten that much into it if I would have started working right away. But I think what's important what you essentially learn in university is asking the right questions, like and actually asking questions, not just doing things, but taking one step back and taking a look at the bigger picture and say, okay, how can we do this in a way that it will work in a few years? Like when you the most tutorials, like they have a very basic setup, and you get results, but they don't see the bigger picture. And I think for me, that was the biggest learning I took away from university. Not necessarily the coding skills, but rather the business side.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I never considered that. To be honest, I was expecting you to say something about like data structures and algorithms. So
Yeah.
that's interesting to think about. But it is a big skill to be able to take that step back from the problem. And I think obviously on a micro level, I do think that's always the best debugging technique as well. Is just to take a general step back, literally take a breath, and take a step back, especially if you're frustrated.
Yeah.
Then it's a really
Yeah.
good way to do it. If necessary, take a walk around your block, if it's daytime. Because I think sometimes if we zoom out a little bit, we can often find the result we were looking for. In fact, actually, my old roommate in university was a comp sci student, and I remember he used to have just a piece of paper on his wall saying, "Relax, think clearly, and you'll solve the problem." And I thought that was a bit silly at first. And then I
Yeah.
thought about it, and I was like, do you know what? Actually, that makes a lot of sense. Like, obviously, you still have to study for exams, of course, but like sometimes it is as simple as just going through that mental process. And the amount of stuff that gets in your own head when you're when you're coding, it's always worth considering. And I guess as a follow-on to my initial question about the degree, now that we're on that topic, would you say if someone was, say, 18 and leaving school right now, and they had the grades to go to like a good university to study comp sci, would you say go, or would you say go straight into a job, assuming they were decent enough at coding?
Mm. Yeah, that's hard to say. From my experience, when I would have the same decision to make like 5 6 years back ago, I would tell myself to just start working right away. But I think it always depends on where you want to go, and especially like if you have an idea of where you want to work or what job you want to do, you should research on, does the degree help you get there faster or makes it easier to get there. If so, like there are many things like my brother's into economics, and for him a degree is makes a big difference for employers to choose him or not choose him. But if you're like especially into really development, not so much into project management in development or in tech companies, um, currently I would say rather spend the time on learning the tech, on working on concrete projects, maybe even creating a portfolio of demo apps and a GitHub page. Like I know many companies that the first thing they do when they have someone for for the company to join, they take a look at their GitHub profile and see what they've done there. So yeah, personally, I would say start developing, start working, and skip the university.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, because I find a lot of people who did do comp sci would agree with you where it can be better to go straight in. And I think in the UK it's even more of a interesting question, because we unfortunately have to pay quite high fees to go to university. And in Scotland it's free actually, but only if you went to a Scottish school. I'm a very weird edge case where I went to an English school, and
Yeah.
so I still had to pay for university. But it's one of those ones where if you go to an English school and you go to English university, then it's £9,000 a year. So it's a huge investment
Okay.
in people's
Yeah.
time, and you pay that back with interest. So it's one of those ones where I would never outright discourage someone to go to university, because it depends on their individual position. But if you do go, it's definitely a good idea to make the most of it. Like perhaps maybe start some kind of company, either as a CTO or CEO, when you're at university, because often as well, to be blunt, universities have accelerator programs or funding available. So it can be
Yeah.
quite a nice
Yeah.
way of doing it. I
True.
mean, if I was to, I don't regret going to university, but I basically just spent all my time either drinking or playing rugby. So, it was fun, but
Same for me. Yeah. But
yeah.
you have to consider what I just said is also with the background that university was free for me. I didn't have
Mm.
to pay anything, and I think it would even I would even say skip university when you have to pay for it, because then like you can make the money that you would pay for university in your first 2 or 3 years when you're at the company. So
Mm. Not to mention as well
and you're learning a lot from my experience. You're learning a lot more about business, about working in a team, about achieving goals when you're working in a company than at university. That's just
yeah.
my point of view.
I definitely, yeah, definitely see your point there. Because the other thing as well is like the cost of not earning anything for 3 years essentially. Because
Hmm.
maybe you're working a bar to like cover your costs or something like that.
Hmm.
But it's probably not going to be huge money. Whereas I know in the UK now we've started in the last couple of years really pushing apprenticeships more. Previously,
Hmm.
apprenticeships were only really a thing if you worked in like construction or plumbing or anything kind of trades related. Whereas in the last couple of years, it's much more of a thing for software engineering now. And you can make good money as sort of a 17-year-old because you can leave school at 16 here. You can make good money as a 17-year-old, leave school, become a software engineer. And then, by the time you're in your mid 20s, you could be a senior and the
Right.
money's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So it's something people should seriously consider. And don't just go to university because your parents want you to. Is is always an important bit of advice. Although that can be harder in practice to persuade them. And for you, I actually meant to ask: is SupaStarter is that your first like online business, or have you launched other ones before?
Yes, it's the first one that I really that I completely built myself, and that I'm the one responsible for everything, like marketing, building, and it's a really interesting thing because it's the first time I actually make some passive income with it, with something. Before it was just you work your hours, you get your salary. Um, but now it's actually you wake up in the morning and have two Stripe notifications and just made $300, which is really cool. And also this gives you the freedom of just doing your thing. Of course, you have to adjust to customer feedback and do some research on the market, but you're in responsibility of what you're going to do with the project.
Yeah. How was that feeling the first time you got a Stripe notification? Must have been good, right?
Yeah, it was actually the same as I just said. I woke up and saw the notification, and that was like one of the best days ever.
Yeah, that must be awesome. Like, I'm still in the waiting phase of Pinpoint. I've made money online in other ways, but nothing like completely passive in terms of like a code product. Like I've sold
Yeah.
advertising on here, and I've done mentoring for mentor crews and some stuff like that. But yeah, Pinpoint. If I start, basically that will be my first purely code
Hmm.
product to make money. So I'm looking forward to the day I hopefully get that first Stripe notification. So be a good feeling. And
The, the
yeah, so
problem is
sorry,
you
go on.
very very quickly get used to it. Especially in January, things were going really great because I did a lot of marketing. A lot of engagement on Twitter and so on, and I nearly got one sale every day. So
Wow.
now when you actually have a day where you don't have a sale, that feels like something is wrong. And the thing about this is you have to keep it going. Since you're the only one doing all the things, or now we're two people, but I'm still the one responsible for marketing and also the next boilerplate. um, you have to find the balance of doing something for the product, or developing the product, and also trying to market it. And I actually noticed this right now because I've spent the last 2 3 weeks mainly on coding because as I said, we were doing a big refactoring internally. um, and that really influences the sales. So as I said before, there was like nearly one sale a day, and now it's like one or two a week. And the influence of active marketing, especially in this small niche, is very is very noticeable.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think what's cool about what you do with the marketing on the side of things, you're because by building in public, you're interacting with the very audience that you're. Because someone
Yeah.
like me is probably pretty much bang on your prime customer, right? And I will be your customer for my next project, I promise. You have it in recording now.
Oh, wait,
But
wait for what's coming. You.
I'm excited to see it. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to do, and I guess what's cool about the marketing side, you've just got to learn on the fly as you go. It's not like code where
Mm.
it's either kind of right or wrong. Like marketing, it's a bit of a yeah. As soon as I started even marketing this podcast, I thought, wow, marketing's a hard job. Like I've never understood how hard that job was until just now.
Yeah, and to be honest, I have no idea how to do it. That's just I'm just trying to spread the word about the product and try to make people understand it. I think that's in the beginning. That's the most important thing,
Mm,
because you underestimate most people who start a business underestimate how difficult it is to make people understand what your product actually does. I see this a lot of times with people in the indie hacker community, especially on Twitter. They have really great ideas. They have very good skills, and I go to the landing page, and after 2 or 3 minutes, I have no idea what the product does. And that doesn't mean the product is bad or that there isn't the need for this product, but um, it's just, I mean, I spent the first 2 or 3 months optimizing the landing page and my external communication, just the wording. Like I pivoted from boilerplate to starter template, mentioning indie hackers and the word SaaS more, because that made people understand what this does.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's almost we almost end up biased towards our own kind of thing. Like, oh, of course, it's obvious what it does because we're working on it day in day
Sure,
out, and
sure.
it's something I already identified with Pinpoint before the launch. And I reckon,
Yeah.
actually, judging by the rough release schedule, this podcast is probably coming out around now. Hopefully, although it's probably delayed. Uh,
Mhm.
it's I'm currently running with your personal assistant for your job search. But I've
Mhm.
searched high and low, and I think one group of guys in New York tried to launch something similar to this like 5 years ago. But other than that, no one's tried it, which is either a bad thing or a good thing, and I'm not sure which. But I'm trying to almost educate people on why, for one of the most important decisions of your life, why you should have some
Mhm.
kind of quantitative analysis behind that and actually be able to make an objective decision. But that's quite difficult to frame in a few sentences, really. And I think
Yeah.
I think you're right, and I'm not surprised what you say about completely optimizing the landing page. It's so important.
True. I mean, that's actually something that you just mentioned about you're not sure if your product is good or just no one had the idea before. Um, I had the very similar situation with a product that essentially ended up in being the the code base or the research base for SupaStarter in the beginning, which was a project called Crater. It was a platform to build um, product quizzes. Like when you have a Shopify or WooCommerce store,
Mm,
you can just import your products, create some questions, and map the answers to certain products, so your customers can come into your shop and say, okay, I need a jacket for, I don't know, skiing or whatever. Answer 3 questions, and this product would match the answers of the user to the best product for these answers. Um, and what I did was, like, I researched on this idea with my understanding of what it was and my wording. Like, I think I called it in the beginning a product assistant or something like that. And I didn't find anything like that. So I thought, yeah, this is probably a very good product idea. Not many competitors, and started working on it. Like, I actually worked on this for over a year, um, and very spent a lot of time on it, and ended up um, finding that there are a lot of competitors and very big competitors. They just phrase it differently. They most of the time named this product quizzes, um, and yeah, when I searched for this keyword, then there were like immediately 4 or 5 solutions, and I think from that experience, getting into the space first is essential for finding a good product idea. Like you have to know how people are working in this area, how they name things, and then you can actually do some research on it. So that's why I think a business or in an area that you're actually already in is always a very good thing to start with.
Yeah, and that ties really back in what we were saying way back in both in the podcast and in the coder's journey, where if you're just learning, do something and try and create some kind of project that's relevant to you. And it's no coincidence that the most common type of business to fail is a restaurant, because what
Hmm.
happens is an accountant and I don't know, an accountant and a lawyer. Not picking on accountants and lawyers, but they're sick of corporate life. They earn great money. Um, they meet up for a drink on their 50th birthday, and they're like, "Do you know what? Let's start a restaurant. It's what we've always wanted to do. No culinary
Yeah,
training, nothing." And then 18 months later, Gordon Ramsay's there, and they're on Kitchen Nightmares. Because the thing is, you have to understand a background of the industry
yeah,
you're in. Like the reason why I'm building Pinpoint is because I used to be a recruiter, and I would speak to candidates day in day out, and I knew they would struggle to make decisions. And it's something
yeah,
that I don't have the stats on it, but a lot of people change jobs every year. So that's why I'm doing what I did. Like if I tried to make accountancy software, I think I'd really struggle because I don't have a clue about how any of it works. Like I totally agree. You have to understand your niche, and the more you've worked in it, really, the better. It's not quite the right phrase, but it's almost like dog fooding in the sense of like you have to know the problem.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what we already said before. Like the
Hmm.
best thing is to solve your own problem, and that was also true for the project I just mentioned, because I had been like I've created a few WooCommerce stores, and not for myself, for clients. Um, I knew how this was basically working, so I knew how to integrate it with the API and so on. But I actually had no idea how businesses were using shops, how the people working for that business were interacting with the shop admin panel and so on, and how customers were using the shop. And what I found when I then did more research on the idea was, um, customers said, I don't need to an assistant to find my products, because like there are just 10 products, I can just scroll through the list myself. And the other way around, when there was a bigger shop or a bigger store, um, the people owning the shop said, yeah, but that's far too much work to map all the products and create this thing, and the value that you get out of it is far too low for that. And so that was just that I would have needed to evaluate that before I started, and that's one of the major issues I see with a lot of businesses, that they just start without any validation of the idea, and then after a year of work, and I know that myself, it's very painful, because you've spent so much time, so much love into this product, and no one's going to use it.
Yeah, it's painful, and it can be hard for people to hear, but it's better to understand that before you spend and invest so much time in your life on something like that. And it's
Absolutely.
emotional to put your own time into a business. So it's one of those ones that people. It's a hard truth. I guess is how I describe it, and it's like that classic problem where engineers just try and solve other engineers' problems. And like I know on the show Silicon Valley, they did a good kind of episode on that. But then I think, do you know what? I think there's something almost an underrated problem is that I think the opposite is often true. Engineers only validate with other engineers, and the other engineers
Yeah.
tell them their idea is bad. Like, have you ever seen that classic Hacker News post from the founder of Dropbox?
No.
So it's pretty funny. Basically, they explain what Dropbox is. I guess this must be like late
Mm-hmm.
noughties, like 2008. They
Mm-hmm.
explain what Dropbox is, the value proposition, and then the top comment is saying, "Yeah, I don't really know about this. It all feels a bit silly. Like it's very trivial for me to just spin up a Linux server, SSH into it, pull down the files." And it's like, whoa! But it was the most upvoted thing. And it's like almost a Hall of Fame thing for me to think, right, don't only validate this with engineers, because um, I would always try and explain that to someone who, you know, doesn't know what a command line is, or something like that. Like, of course, they're going to see the value of Dropbox. So it's important to not just validate with engineers, both so that you don't create an engineering solution, but also as well so you can find out there may well be a market for people that don't know how to use computers really well.
Exactly. I mean, for my business, it is important to validate it
Yeah,
with
very true.
developers because that is my target group. But
That's a good
I mean,
point.
that's the point. The people you should evaluate the idea with is the potential customers, and that's actually a very hard thing to find in the beginning, because when you're not very deep into the business, you actually have to get into there and find people who are potential customers to actually validate the idea, not even to sell something, but to just validate it. And there we go again. That's where it is easy to get started in an area that you're already in. But you just mentioned Silicon Valley, the TV show. I
Mm.
just wanted to get back to that, because I love the show, and I just for the upcoming SupaStarter version, I just built the new landing page, and to have a dummy logo in there, I just used Aviato as the name, which is the company from Oleg Backman, and I think that's the one of the best TV show characters ever.
He steals that show hands down. I mean, they're all great, but yeah, Ehrlich is fantastic, and he just I just love the whole idea of him. Just I think Aviator, the business model was like it just tells you, it reports the departure boards of the nearest airport, like something quite
Mm.
silly, but that you could sell for a quick buck, and then that's just all he's been able to ride off for like 20 years. It's great. I love that show. Is just so on the nose, and it's funny. The season one has aged interestingly because they're doing things like talking about Ruby on Rails like it's the hot new
Mm.
thing.
Mm.
But I suppose that just goes to show how quickly web dev moves. Really, that I'm kind of laughing at that when I watch that back now. And actually, 10 years ago, that was the really cool thing to be using.
Yeah, that's actually. I mean, that's a good and a bad thing, because it on the one hand side means you have to constantly keep learning. I mean,
Mm.
it's just like things that are state of the art now didn't even exist 2 years ago, and this will be the same for the next 2 years. And on the other hand side, that means you actually always have the ability to get into web development, because you can just start learning the current stack and you're actually good to go, because what you learned 10 years ago is probably not really relevant anymore, like jQuery.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. Like, for example, for me, I learned to code when React hooks were brand new. No, they'd just come out, so I learned that as standard. But most experienced developers had never used them before. So I know I keep saying the words value proposition, but my value proposition, I'm going to say it anyway, was that I could go into a new job and I could
Mhm.
actually help the senior devs a little bit. Like it'd be a two-way thing where I show them how the React hooks work when they were still using so I'm using functional components and they're using class-based components. So for people listening now, say stuff like NextJS, for example, which is a key component of what you're working on. A lot of devs, particularly more senior ones, they've never had a reason to
Yeah.
use it, particularly if they're not
Yeah.
coding much outside their day job. If you can learn a useful tool like that, then you can quickly get ahead of more senior people. So I agree. It's you can either choose to be intimidated by how quickly this industry moves, or you can embrace it.
Absolutely, and I think one very nice thing to just stay up to date is just now and then take a look at the new trending topics like new frameworks like Astra and so on. And the same goes for, so at work or we have to work with Angular, which is not my favorite.
Mhm.
I've worked with Vue, I've worked with React. I would always pick React currently, but maybe that is completely different in 2 years. But what I want to say is, you have to, or they all have like very very different ecosystems, like different libraries, different ways to do things. They're all getting a bit closer to each other, like they now all have a component based structure. Um, and most of them have these single file component styles, which is also funny because there was like one of the top guys in the Angular community. He just said something like, or he posted something like, "Oh, I have just this idea of putting the code and the template and the styles all in the same file in Angular, where just everyone who knows React or Vue or every other framework just said, come on, this is not something new." Um, but yeah, what I mean is, there are a lot of good ideas in other frameworks, and also good patterns. Like we use in our application a implementation of what is essentially React query or 10-stack query,
Mhm.
because that is something. Now the engineer team, they built something very similar, but before there wasn't something like that, and it's a very very good pattern. And so keeping an eye on what other frameworks do is always good to keep your own project up to date.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more with that. And it's always a good idea just to know a little bit of other tools so you can have some perspective in terms of how other patterns work. And like, for example, with Angular, like you say, if people always thought that it's you separate the files whereas everyone else is in the one file, that's interesting. So I haven't coded in Angular for like 3 years now. So that's must be a fairly recent change then.
No, it's not even a thing. It was just an idea of him.
Oh, an idea, like a proposal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I think yeah, it's been really cool talking to you tonight, and I've already learned a ton myself, so I'm sure the listeners have as well. If people want to find out both more about you and of course SupaStarter, where can they do that?
Yeah. Twitter is the number one place currently. So my name, Jonathan Wilke, or Twitter/SupaStarter, or the website supastarter.dev. That's the place to go.
Fantastic. Well, those links will be in the description, and please do follow us both on Twitter because both of us are sharing. You're much more disciplined about sharing your build and public updates. I've noticed you seem to do it every day. I get a bit lazy with it. I'm
At
maybe
least,
every
at
few
least.
days. Yeah, I do like one video a week on TikTok, and then I do maybe tweet 3 times a week. But I need to step my game up, so
Oh,
I
really?
need to
You
learn from
use
you.
TikTok?
Yeah, it's my
Is
biggest platform.
really? Maybe I need to
Yeah,
get into
I
that.
Do you know what? It's yeah, it's you get some pretty good traffic from it, like unexpectedly, because there's no bias in the algorithm. So you can end
Hmm.
up with your first video getting like 100,000 views, which happened to me
That's
like
crazy.
third video. So yeah, yeah, it's worth doing. Should check it out. So maybe people could find you on TikTok by the time this comes out.
So I'm definitely going to follow you on TikTok after this recording.
Yeah, and the listeners should as well. It's at Cameron Blackwood Code if you want to find me on there. But yeah, thanks again for your time. It's been really, really awesome speaking.
Thank you for having me.